My daughter-in-law threw my plate on the floor and screamed, "Old Shrew, get out of my life!" in front of all her friends. On Monday, I handed her a letter. That made her fall out of her chair. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached." My daughter-in-law threw my plate on the floor and screamed, "Old hag, get out of my life!" in front of all her friends. The clatter of porcelain shattering against the hardwood floor still echoes in my mind. I can still see the 20 pairs of eyes staring at me, some with pity, others with embarrassment. The elegant dinner party at my son's house had come to a standstill, and I was the spectacle. My name is Ashley Thompson. I'm 65 years old, and I've spent my entire life trying to be a good mother, a supportive mother-in-law, and now a doting grandmother. But that night, Victoria made it abundantly clear that none of it mattered. "Mom, please," my son Robert whispered, his eyes pleading with me not to make the scene worse. Not once did he turn to his wife to chastise her behavior. Not once did he stand up for me. I stood there, food splattered across my beige slacks, my hands trembling. Victoria glared at me, her perfectly made-up face contorted with disgust. This wasn't the first time she had made her feelings known, but it was certainly the most public and humiliating. "I think it's best if you leave, Ashley," she said, her voice dripping with false concern. "You're clearly upset, and we wouldn't want you to have one of your episodes." I don't have episodes. Never have. But Victoria had spent years constructing this narrative about me to Robert and their friends. That I was unstable, difficult, intrusive. And my son, the little boy I had raised alone after his father died when he was just 10 years old, believed her. As I gathered my purse and cardigan, I caught sight of my grandchildren peering from the top of the staircase. 7-year-old Emma and 5-year-old Lucas watched with wide eyes as their grandmother was thrown out of their home like garbage. What were they learning about respect? About family? The drive home was a blur of tears and memories. I remembered when Robert first brought Victoria home 5 years ago. She was charming then, laughing at my stories and complimenting my home. The change had been gradual. A canceled invitation here, a snide remark there. Then came the restrictions. On when I could see my grandchildren, always with an excuse. They were too busy. The kids had activities. Victoria needed family time without in-laws around. I pulled into the driveway of the small house I'd lived in for 40 years. The house where I'd raised Robert alone, working 2 jobs to ensure he had everything he needed. Now he lived in a sprawling home in the suburbs with a wife who despised me for reasons I couldn't understand. Inside, I sank onto my couch, still in my stained clothes, and let the tears flow freely. My phone buzzed, a text from Robert. "Mom, I'm sorry about tonight. Victoria's just stressed with work. Give her some space, okay?" Space. That's all I'd been giving them. So much space that I was becoming a stranger to my own grandchildren. And still, it wasn't enough. I dragged myself to the bathroom and caught sight of my reflection. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Shoulders slumped, eyes red-rimmed, face drawn with sadness. When had I allowed myself to become this person? When had I started believing that I deserved this treatment? That night, I slept fitfully, dreaming of porcelain shattering and voices shouting. In my dreams, I stood up for myself. I told Victoria exactly what I thought of her behavior. I reminded Robert of all the sacrifices I had made for him. But in reality, I had simply walked away, head bowed, defeated. Morning brought no relief. I called my best friend Martha, who had been trying to tell me for years that Victoria was isolating me from my family. "Ashley, enough is enough," Martha said firmly. "You've let that woman walk all over you for too long. When are you going to stand up for yourself?" "What can I do, Martha? If I confront her, she'll just use it as another excuse to keep me away from the children." "So you'll just keep taking her abuse Is that your plan? I had no plan. I felt trapped in an impossible situation. Fight back and risk losing what little contact I had with my family, or continue to endure Victoria's cruelty. What I didn't know then was that Monday would change everything. Monday, when I would hand Victoria a letter that would make her fall out of her chair. A letter that would finally expose the truth and give me back the dignity I had surrendered piece by piece over the years. But first, I needed to find my courage, again. And as I sat at my kitchen table that morning, sipping tea from a chipped mug, I had no idea that courage would find me in the most unexpected place, or that the weapon I needed against Victoria had been in my possession all along. The weekend crawled by in a haze of self-pity and regret. By Sunday afternoon, I couldn't bear to sit alone with my thoughts any longer. I decided to tackle the cluttered attic, a project I'd been putting off for years. At least physical labor might distract me from the persistent ache in my chest. The attic was stifling, filled with decades of memories packed in cardboard boxes. I started with Robert's childhood mementos, baseball trophies, school projects, and photo albums documenting every milestone. Had Victoria seen these? Did she know? How I'd cheered at every game, helped with every science fair project, worked overtime to pay for college applications. Hours passed as I sorted through the boxes. My back ached and dust coated my clothes, but the physical discomfort was almost welcome. A different kind of pain to focus on. That's when I found the large manila envelope tucked behind an old dresser. Didn't recognize it at first. The envelope was yellowed with age, the flap sealed with ancient tape. Inside were documents I hadn't thought about in years. The deed to Robert's house. My late husband James had purchased that property as an investment shortly before his sudden heart attack. He'd intended to renovate it for rental income, but never got the chance. After his death, I couldn't bear to sell it. It was one of the last decisions he'd made. Instead, I'd kept up the property taxes and minimal maintenance, letting it sit vacant for years. When Robert and Victoria got married, they'd been saving for a house. I remembered the moment clearly, sitting at this very kitchen table, sliding a key across to my son. "It's yours," I had told him, explaining that his father had bought the property years ago. "Consider it an early inheritance, and your wedding." Present. Robert had been stunned, grateful. Victoria had been ecstatic. What I hadn't mentioned, what hadn't seemed important at the time, was that I had never legally transferred the property to Robert's name. I'd given them the house to live in, but the deed still listed me as the owner. I stared at the paperwork, my heart pounding. According to these documents, I still owned the house where Robert and Victoria lived. The house Victoria had thrown me out of just 2 days ago. I sank onto a dusty trunk, my mind racing. Did they know? Had they ever checked the property records? Given Victoria's reaction to my presence, I doubted she realized she was living in a house that legally belonged to me. As I continued digging through the envelope, I found insurance papers, tax records, and the original purchase agreement. Everything confirmed what I already knew. The house was still mine. I carried the documents downstairs, spreading them across my kitchen table to examine them properly. There had to be a mistake. Surely I wouldn't have forgotten something so significant. But there was no mistake. I had given Robert the key, told him the house was his, but in the fog of grief following James's death, I had never completed the legal transfer. I had simply handed over the keys and let them move in, trusting that we would sort out the paperwork eventually. But we never had. My phone rang, startling me. It was Sandra, a neighbor who lived near Robert and Victoria. "Ashley? I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said hesitantly. "Not at all. Is everything okay?" She paused. "I wanted to check on you, after what happened at the dinner party. Word gets around, you know." I closed my eyes, humiliation washing over me anew. "I'm fine, Sandra. Thank you for asking. There's something else, she said, her voice dropping. I'm not one to spread gossip, but I thought you should know. I've seen Victoria with someone. Several times now. My grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? A man. Not Robert. They meet at the cafe on Maple Street. They seem very close. Yesterday I saw them in his car. They were kissing, Ashley. The room seemed to tilt. Victoria was cheating on my son? The same woman who had systematically pushed me out of their lives, who had convinced Robert I was the problem. Have you told Robert? I asked, my voice barely audible. No, I thought you should know first. I wasn't sure if I should say anything at all. After Sandra hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table, surrounded by property documents and this new, explosive information. Victoria was cheating on my son. She was living in my house, and she had humiliated me in front of everyone. Pieces started falling into place. Victoria's increasing hostility toward me, her determination to cut me out of their lives. What if it wasn't just ordinary mother-in-law tension? What if she was deliberately isolating Robert from his support system? I needed to confirm Sandra's story before jumping to conclusions. But combined with the property documents spread before me, I now held information that could completely change the power dynamic between Victoria and me. For the first time since that disastrous dinner party, I felt a flicker of something other than despair. Not quite hope, not quite vindication, but a growing certainty that the universe had just handed me the means to reclaim my dignity and protect my son. Monday was approaching, and with it, a decision I never thought I'd have to make. Should I confront Victoria with what I knew? Should I tell Robert about his wife's betrayal? Or should I simply assert my legal rights to the house they lived in? As the sun set outside my window, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being the victim in Victoria's story. It was time for me to write my own ending. That night, sleep eluded me. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with possibilities and consequences. By morning, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones, but a strange clarity had emerged. I called Martha. I need your advice, I said when she answered. Can you come over? An hour later, we sat at my kitchen table, the property documents and a pot of strong coffee between us. Martha listened without interruption as I explained everything. The house, Sandra's revelation about Victoria's affair, my growing suspicion that Victoria was systematically isolating my son. When I finished, Martha reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I've been waiting 5 years for you to see what that woman really is. I should have listened to you sooner, I admitted. The question is, what are you going to do now? Martha asked, tapping the property deed. You have options, Ashley. Real power. Did I? The thought was so foreign after years of yielding to Victoria's hostility, stepping back to keep the peace, making myself smaller to accommodate her demands. I could tell Robert about the affair, I said quietly. Martha frowned. And what if he doesn't believe you? Victoria's had years to poison him against you. He might think you're making it up out of spite. She was right. Victoria had skillfully positioned me as the jealous, clingy mother who couldn't let go. Any accusation from me would be filtered through that lens. Or, Martha continued, you could use the house. Legally, you could evict them. I recoiled at the thought. I would never do that to Robert or my grandchildren. Of course not. But Victoria doesn't know that. I stared at my oldest friend, seeing the strategic mind that had made her a formidable business owner before retirement. You think I should threaten her? I think you should let her know that you know. About everything. The affair, the house. Let her realize that the power dynamic has shifted. Martha's eyes gleamed. Watch her squirm for a change. The idea was tempting, so tempting that it frightened me. Was I really considering such calculated, Retaliation? But wasn't that precisely what Victoria had been doing to me for years? I don't want revenge, I said finally. I just want to protect my son and my grandchildren. And maybe to get back a little of what she's taken from me. Martha nodded. Then you need evidence of the affair. Something concrete that Robert can't dismiss. And then what? Break my son's heart? Destroy his family? Victoria's already doing that, Martha said bluntly. You'd just be opening his eyes to the truth. After Martha left, I sat alone, weighing my options. The thought of confronting Victoria made my stomach clench with anxiety. She was younger, more confident, quicker with cutting remarks. But she had also never seen me fight back. I spent the afternoon driving past the cafe on Maple Street, where Sandra had seen Victoria with her lover. Fortune favored me. There they were, sitting at an outdoor table, their hands intertwined. I parked a safe distance away and used my phone to take pictures. Victoria looked animated, happy, her face lit with an ease I'd never seen when she was with Robert. The man was handsome in a polished way, expensive haircut, designer clothes. They seemed comfortable together, familiar. This was clearly not a new development. I followed at a distance when they left the cafe. They walked to a sleek car parked on a quiet side street. Before getting in, Victoria glanced around furtively, then leaned in for a passionate kiss. I captured it all on my phone, feeling sick but determined. They drove to a small hotel on the outskirts of town. I didn't follow further. I didn't need to. By evening, I knew what I had to do. Not for revenge, not for satisfaction, but because my son deserved the truth, and because I deserved to reclaim my dignity. I sat at my desk and began to write, the words flowing more easily than I expected. Victoria, I want you to know 3 things. First, the house you live in, the house you threw me out of, legally belongs to me. I never transferred the deed to Robert's name. Enclosed are copies of the relevant documents. Second, I know about your affair. I know about the man you meet at the cafe on Maple Street, about your trips to the Parkview Hotel. I have photographic evidence, also enclosed. Third, I love my son and my grandchildren more than anything in this world. I've stepped back, stayed silent, and endured your cruelty because I feared losing them entirely. That ends now. I don't want to hurt Robert. I don't want to devastate my grandchildren. But I will not allow you to continue destroying our family while living under my roof. You have a choice. End the affair immediately and start treating me with the basic respect any human being deserves, or I will tell Robert everything and begin formal eviction proceedings. I'm not asking to be your best friend. I'm simply requiring decency for myself and for the sake of my son who deserves better than betrayal. You have until Friday to decide. Ashley. I read the letter over, feeling a strange calm. The words weren't vindictive or emotional, just clear, factual, firm. I enclosed copies of the property documents and printed several of the photos I'd taken. Tomorrow was Monday. Tomorrow I would hand Victoria this letter that would make her fall out of her chair. Tomorrow everything would change. For the first time in years, I slept soundly, undisturbed by fears of disapproval or rejection. Whatever happened next, I would face it standing tall. Monday morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I dressed carefully, a simple blue dress that Martha always said brought out my eyes. Comfortable, but elegant flats, a touch of makeup, not for Victoria's benefit, but for my own. Today, I needed every ounce of confidence I could muster. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter, sealed and waiting. Inside were the truths that could shatter the careful facade Victoria had constructed, the proof of her affair, the documents showing that I owned the house she had made into her fortress against me. I checked the time. Robert would be at work. He always left by 7:30. The children would be at school. Victoria typically spent Monday mornings at home, catching up on household affairs before meeting friends for lunch. It was the perfect opportunity. As I drove to their house, my resolve wavered. Was I really prepared to upend everyone's lives? What if this made things worse? What if Robert blamed me for the messenger rather than Victoria for her betrayal? No, I said aloud, gripping the steering wheel tighter. I can't keep living like this. The house, my house, legally speaking, came into view. The lawn was immaculate, the garden beds bursting with the flowers Victoria selected each season. Even from the outside, it looked like the perfect home for the perfect family. But I knew better now. I parked at the curb, took a deep breath, and walked up the stone path to the front door. The envelope felt heavy in my hands, weighted with consequences. I rang the doorbell and waited, heart pounding. After a moment, I heard footsteps approaching. The door swung open, and there stood Victoria, perfectly put together as always in designer jeans and a crisp white blouse. Her expression shifted instantly from neutral to cold annoyance. "Ashley," she said flatly. "Robert's not home." "I know," I replied, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "I came to see you." She raised an eyebrow, making no move to invite me in. "I thought I made it clear on Friday that we needed space." "You made a lot of things clear on Friday," I said. "May I come in? This won't take long." Victoria hesitated, then stepped back grudgingly. "5 minutes. I have a busy day." I followed her into the living room, the same room where she'd humiliated me just 3 days ago. The physical evidence was gone. No shattered plate, no food stains on the floor. But the emotional debris remained, thick in the air between us. "Well?" Victoria crossed her arms, tapping her foot impatiently. "What's so important?" I held out the envelope. "This is for you." She looked at it suspiciously. "What is it?" "Something you need to see." With obvious reluctance, Victoria took the envelope and tore it open. Her eyes scanned the first page of my letter, widening slightly. Then she flipped to the property documents, her fingers tensing around the paper. When she reached the photographs, her face drained of color. She looked up at me, then back at the photos, then at the deed. Her legs seemed to give out as she sank into the nearest chair, the papers clutched in her trembling hands. This is absurd," she stammered, but the panic in her eyes betrayed her. "These photos they don't show anything, and this paperwork must be outdated." "The photos show exactly what they appear to show," I said calmly. "And the property records are current. I checked with the county office yesterday." Victoria's composure cracked further. "You had no right to spy on me." "And you had no right to treat me the way you have for years," I countered. "To isolate my son from me, to limit my time with my grandchildren, to throw me out of my own house." "Your house?" Her voice rose shrilly. "This is our house, Robert and I. Robert and you have been living here because I allowed it," I interrupted. "I gave him the key as a wedding present, but I never legally transferred ownership. An oversight on my part, but a fortunate one as it turns out." Victoria stood suddenly, her face flushing with anger. "This is blackmail." "No," I said evenly. "This is a boundary. This is me standing up for myself after years of your cruelty." "You wouldn't dare tell Robert," she hissed. "It would destroy him. Is that what you want? To hurt your precious son?" I met her gaze steadily. "I don't want to hurt anyone. That's why I'm giving you a choice. End the affair. Treat me with basic respect. Or face the consequences of your actions." Victoria's eyes narrowed to slits. "You think you've won, don't you? You think you can waltz in here with your threats and your so-called evidence and suddenly have power over me? This isn't about winning, Victoria. It's about truth. It's about my family. Yes, my family, including my son and my grandchildren, and my place in it." She threw the papers onto the coffee table, her hands shaking with rage. "Get out of my house." "My house," I corrected gently, turning toward the door. "You have until Friday to decide what happens next." As I walked out, I felt lighter than I had in years, despite the tension of the confrontation. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't lost control. I had simply spoken my truth and set my terms. From the car, I glanced back at the house. Victoria stood in the window, watching me, her expression unreadable from this distance. I had no idea what she would choose to do next. End the affair, agree to my terms, or call my bluff. But for the first time in our 5-year relationship, the choice wasn't entirely hers. I started the engine and pulled away from the curb, realizing that I was no longer afraid. Whatever happened next, I had reclaimed something essential: my voice. I expected to have until Friday before hearing from Victoria or Robert. I was wrong. By Tuesday evening, my phone was ringing constantly. First Victoria, then Robert, then Victoria again. I let each call go to voicemail, needing time to steady myself before the inevitable confrontation. Victoria's message was venomous. "You've made a terrible mistake, Ashley. You have no idea what you've done." Robert's was confused, worried. "Mom, what's going on? Victoria is upset. She says you threatened her? Please call me back." I took a deep breath and called my son. "Robert, I think we need to talk in person." "Mom, whatever is happening between you and Victoria, can't you just apologize? She's really upset." Something in me snapped. "No, Robert, not this time. This is important. Can you meet me at Riverside Park in an hour?" He hesitated. "All right. But Mom, please, let's resolve this peacefully." The park was quiet in the early evening, just a few joggers and dog walkers enjoying the fading light. I sat on a bench overlooking the river, watching the water flow steadily past. There was comfort in that constancy. The river had been here long before my problems and would continue long after. Robert arrived looking harried, his tie loosened, hair slightly mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it. A nervous habit from childhood. "Mom," he said, sitting beside me. "What's this about? Victoria says you're threatening to evict us?" I turned to face him, my heart aching at the worry in his eyes. "Robert, there are things you need to know. Things I should have told you sooner." Slowly, carefully, I explained about the house, how it had remained in my name all these years through oversight, not intention. Robert looked shocked but not angry. "Why didn't you say something before?" he asked. "Honestly? I forgot. After giving you the key, in my mind, it was your house. I only discovered the truth when I was cleaning the attic this weekend." Robert nodded, slowly. "We can fix that. I'll call our lawyer tomorrow and have the deed transferred properly." I took a deep breath. "There's more, Robert." His face fell. "Mom, please. If this is about Victoria's behavior at the dinner party, she's stressed with— Victoria is having an affair," I said quietly. Robert froze, his face draining of color. "What?" I reached for his hand. "I'm so sorry. I wouldn't tell you this if— I wasn't certain." "You're wrong," he said, pulling his hand away. "Victoria wouldn't. She loves me. She loves our family." "Robert," I said gently, retrieving my phone. "I have proof." I showed him the photos, Victoria with her lover at the cafe, their passionate kiss by the car, entering the hotel together. With each image, Robert's expression crumbled further. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be." "I'm sorry," I said again, feeling his pain like a physical wound. "I didn't want to hurt you." "But you deserve to know the truth." He stood abruptly, pacing in front of the bench. "How long have you known?" "Just since Sunday. A neighbor saw them together and told me." Robert ran his hands through his hair, his breathing ragged. "And the eviction threat?" Was that real or just to scare her? I would never put you and the children on the street, I said firmly. Never. But Victoria didn't know that. I wanted her to understand that things had to change, that I wouldn't be treated like dirt in my own family anymore. He was quiet, for a long moment, staring out at the river. All these years, he said finally, Victoria told me you were trying to come between us, that you were clingy, possessive, that your feelings were always hurt because you couldn't accept that I had my own life. My throat tightened. And you believed her? She was my wife, he said simply, then corrected himself. She is my wife. I tried so hard, Robert. I stepped back. I made myself small. I accepted the scraps of time she allowed me with you and the children, all to keep the peace. Robert turned to face me, his eyes red-rimmed. I should have seen it. I should have stood up for you. We both made mistakes, I said, but it's not too late to fix them. What am I going to do? He asked, suddenly looking like the lost boy who'd faced his father's death all those years ago. The children. You're going to take some time to think? I said gently. You're going to decide what's best for you and Emma and Lucas. And whatever you decide, I'll support you. She's going to say you're lying, that you've always been jealous of her. I nodded. Probably. That's why I made copies of everything, the photos, the property documents. She can deny it, but the truth is the truth. Robert sank back onto the bench, shoulders slumped. I need to confront her. Do you want me to come with you? He considered this, then shook his head. No. This is between me and Victoria. But afterward. His voice faltered. Afterward, I might need a place to stay, with the kids. You know you're always welcome, I said, my heart both breaking for his pain and swelling with hope that my son might finally be coming back to me. As dusk settled over the park, Robert and I sat in silence, watching the river flow. The confrontation with Victoria still loomed ahead, but something fundamental had already shifted. For the first time in years, my son and I were on the same side, facing the truth together instead of divided by Victoria's manipulations. Whatever happened next, we would face it as a family, the real family that had existed long before Victoria entered our lives. 6 months can change everything. On a warm Saturday morning, I stood in my kitchen preparing breakfast. Pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, a weekend tradition that had recently been reinstated. Upstairs, I could hear the patter of small feet and excited whispers as Emma and Lucas awakened. Grammy, is breakfast ready? Emma called down the stairs, her voice carrying through the house. My house, which now held more love and laughter than it had in decades. Almost ready, sweetheart. Tell your daddy to bring you down. So much had changed since that fateful day when I'd handed Victoria the letter. The confrontation between her and Robert had been explosive, according to my son. Victoria had denied everything at first, then shifted to blame. It was Robert's fault for being emotionally distant, my fault for turning him against her, society's fault for not understanding her needs. But faced with the undeniable evidence of her affair, her defenses had eventually crumbled. The woman who had seemed so invincible, so cruelly confident, had revealed herself to be a house of cards, fragile, insecure, built on lies. Robert and the children had moved in with me the very next day, bringing only what they could carry in. A few hastily packed suitcases. Victoria had been apoplectic, threatening lawsuits, custody battles, even physical violence. But when Robert's lawyer, not mine, as I'd insisted this remain primarily between them, had presented the property documents along with the evidence of infidelity, her position had weakened considerably. The divorce proceedings had been difficult, especially for the children. Emma, at 7, understood enough to know that her mother had done something that hurt her father deeply. Lucas, at 5, simply couldn't comprehend why his family had shattered overnight. I'd done my best to provide stability during those turbulent months. My small house became a refuge, not just for Robert and the children, but for me as well. After years of being pushed to the margins of my family's life, I was suddenly central again, needed again. Robert appeared in the kitchen doorway, a child clinging to each hand. "Good morning, Mom. Something smells amazing." "Dinosaur pancakes," Lucas exclaimed, eyes wide with anticipation. I smiled, flipping a triceratops-shaped pancake onto a waiting plate. "Who wants the first one?" "Me. Me," both children shouted, scrambling onto the chairs I'd placed booster seats on. As I served breakfast, I marveled at how natural this felt, having my family around my table, starting the day together, building new routines and traditions. It wasn't the future I had envisioned, certainly not one that came without pain, but it was real and precious nonetheless. Robert caught my eye over the children's heads and smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, unlike the strained expressions I'd grown accustomed to during his marriage. "Thanks for everything, Mom. I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you." "That's what family does," I said simply. "We show up for each other." After breakfast, while Robert helped the children get dressed, I checked my email. Among the usual messages was one that made my heart skip: confirmation that the property transfer was complete. I had officially signed over the house, my house, to Robert. It had been my decision, made after months of careful thought. The house held too many painful memories for all of us now, tainted by Victoria's betrayal. More importantly, it had become clear that Robert needed a fresh start, a home that was truly his, without Victoria's influence or my history. The sale had closed yesterday. Robert didn't know yet. I'd tell him today, show him the papers making, him the sole legal owner. It was time for him to rebuild his life on his own terms, in a space that belonged entirely to him. The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Robert appeared in the hallway, confusion on his face. "Are we expecting someone?" I shook my head. "I'll get it." Opening the front door, I found Victoria standing on my porch, looking nothing like the polished, confident woman who had once thrown my plate to the floor. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. "Ashley," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. "May I come in?" I hesitated, protective instincts flaring. "Victoria, I don't think that's—" "Please," she interrupted. "Just for a minute. I need to say something." Behind me, I heard Robert's sharp intake of breath as he recognized his ex-wife's voice. "Mom, it's okay. Let her in." Victoria stepped into the hallway, her eyes darting nervously to Robert, then back to me. "I won't stay long. She took a deep breath. "I came to apologize. Of all the things I had expected from Victoria, an apology had never been among them. These past months, I've had a lot of time to think," she continued. "The divorce, losing custody." Her voice faltered. "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I did the things I did." Robert crossed his arms. And I was wrong," Victoria said simply. "I was insecure, jealous of your relationship with your mother. I convinced myself she was trying to control our lives, when really I was the one doing the controlling." She turned to me. "Ashley, I treated you terribly. The things I said, the way I isolated you from Robert and the children. There's no excuse. I'm truly sorry." I searched her face for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas, but found only genuine remorse. This wasn't the Victoria I had known. Or perhaps it was a Victoria I had never been allowed to know. "Thank you for saying that," I said carefully. "It means a lot to hear." "The children are upstairs," Robert said. "They're almost ready for the park. Would you like to see them before we go?" Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I would. Very much." As she climbed the stairs to greet her children, Robert turned to me. Do you think she's sincere? I considered the question. Yes, I do. People can change, Robert. Sometimes they just need a wake-up call. Later that day, after Victoria had gone and the children were napping, exhausted from their morning at the park, I showed Robert the property transfer documents. Mom, this is. I can't accept this. You can and you will, I said firmly. It's time for you and the children to have your own home again. A fresh start. Robert embraced me, his voice thick with emotion. I don't deserve you. You deserve everything good, Robert. You always have. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The pain of that dinner party, the shock of discovering the truth about Victoria, the courage it had taken to write that letter, all of it had led to this moment of peace. I had never wanted revenge. I had only wanted what everyone deserves: respect, love, and a place in my family. In standing up for myself, I had not only reclaimed my dignity, but had also helped my son see the truth he had been blind to for too long. The future was uncertain. Robert and the children would eventually move back into their own home. Victoria would remain part of our lives through the children. Healing would take time for all of us. But as I watched the golden light fade from the sky, I felt a profound gratitude. The plate Victoria had thrown to the floor that night had shattered beyond repair, but my family, my real family, had not. We had pieced ourselves back together, stronger at the broken places, ready to begin again. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.